You're listening to Deliberate Living, a podcast that inspires, empowers, and encourages listeners to live life more authentically. My name is Holly Priestley, and I'm a full-time nomad and creator who has been living in my 1997 Ford van since January 1st of 2019. I travel the United States with my dog, learning how to live with more authenticity. I explore different ways people choose to ditch the prescribed life we've all been sold and live on their terms, finding freedom and happiness however they choose. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Deliberate Living Podcast. I am your host, Holly Priestley, and this week my guest is Lee and his dog Wander, who might not make an appearance on this actual show, but he's here. And Lee and Wander have been living out of vans for almost 7 years now. 3 different vans, is that right?
4.
4 different
well, I'm
vans.
on my 4th, yeah.
He's on his 4th van.
I guess kind of 5, and a couple cars and tents.
Oh, all right, well, why don't we just launch right there then? Why don't you give a brief little backstory about how you got here? How you got to almost 7 years living on the road. What does that look like?
What does that look like? Well, I guess hello, my name's Lee, backwards it's eel. Every time I put my right hand up to give you a peace sign, I do that. But I usually tell people I'm from planet Earth at this point, but I thought about saying Never Neverland now, because that sounds cool too. But, so how did I start, or how did I get started? Why am I still living in a van 7 years later? Why am I on my 4th one, or maybe 5th, kind of like...
what were you doing 8 years ago before you moved into the van?
I was renting a room in a house with a bunch of other people.
In California?
Everyone was renting, it's expensive, so you always have lots of roommates. Mm-hmm. And I was working in the skateboard industry, running a skate shop. But it was pretty much living paycheck to paycheck, and it sucked. And then that long ago, 7 years ago, there wasn't much information about there was information out there, but there wasn't that many people living in vans. Mm-hmm. But one of the guys that rode for the skate company had this van, and it was really cool. He didn't live in it because he had a family, but it was a really cool van. But there was this other dude that did live in his van, and then I was about to move into this other place, and then with 2 other people, and then one of my buddies was I'm gonna go work at this farm and live in my van, and I'm whoa, cool. So then I basically I guess and my boss at the time was if I didn't have a family, I'd live in my trailer on the side, mm-hmm. And so I was just kind of
started
getting the idea poked at me,
Yeah.
And then I made a pros and a cons list, and basically it's kind of funny if you ever saw that. I posted and stuff places, but if you ever saw that pros and cons list, the pros, I just was writing down all these pros, once in a lifetime, no rent was on there twice,
yeah,
this is the time to do it, explore the country, I had all these grand things in the pros list, and then the cons were hard to find a place to poop, hard to take a shower, which I'm kind of just looking at the pros, and they're so amazing looking, and the cons were
pretty minimal.
Those aren't going to be things that are going to stop me from all these pros, so I guess oh yeah, freedom was totally on there too, which is a huge thing, but so I guess I just made pros and cons, and I was whoa, I could try this, and if I don't like it, I'll just do what I was doing before, so I just got a storage unit, put all my stuff in storage. That way, if I didn't like it, I could just, go back to what I was doing before.
Yeah.
I was, pretty much living out of my Corolla on couches for, 3 months, saved up to enough money, $1,500, got my... Well, I was, dreaming every day at the skate shop after work. I'm always just, on my breaks, just, looking at vans. I'm damn, but they're all these sick vans that are really expensive. Sportsmobile was my dream van. I was oh my god, I want a Sportsmobile, but they're 100, way too much. It was unattainable. But anyways, those weren't really the ones those were in the background. But I guess I was just searching Craigslist vans every day.
Yeah.
And then I had $1,500. I saw this I didn't expect to buy like a $1,500 van, but I saw on Craigslist there was this like $1,500 van, and it was like a classic. It looked really fucking cool, but it was like really old. It was this 1978 Dodge Tradesman B2500. You know, like just like yeah, it was really old. But like I said to myself, I was like, yo, if that thing drives, I'm buying it. You know. So I drove like an hour and a half in my Corolla to go look at this thing. It drove good. The guy's like, I'm like, you know, test driving, and the guy's like, step on it, you know, like, and yeah, like, it was like, it's 1978, they thought about more horsepower back then than, like, gas mileage, so, like, when he said step on it went, you know, pretty fast, but I wasn't concerned about, like, the horsepower. It was just, like, $1,500, you're like, it drives, you know, like, hell yeah.
Well, but, like, in California, that's, like, a couple months rent right there, so even if you lived out of it for a couple months, you'd still like break even.
Yeah, well, it was basically 3 months of rent of what I was paying at the time.
That's pretty reasonable.
Yeah. So like, I drove this. I gave the guy $1,500. I drove it back, and then I like was like hitting up everyone. I'm like, can I get a ride back? I need to get my Corolla. You know, like. Then I ended up selling that for like $3,000 plus a surfboard.
Nice.
So and then so then like I got some insulation, some reflectix. I didn't know much about like how to build this thing. I had no skills, so I just like slapped reflectix up in the walls. I'm just like bam, and that was like I was like living in a spaceship for a while. You know, I didn't even know how I was gonna cook a meal the first night. I was just like. You know, I was just like, okay, like, we got the van, we're doing it, you know, like, luckily I still had my regular job running the skate shop, and, like, they had a laundry machine, they had a shower, they had, like...
Dang, what a skate shop.
Well, it was, like, actually, it was a skate shop in a warehouse where we ran a bunch of brands, too.
Okay.
So it was, like,
so that's why it had all those things.
Yeah, it was, like, a huge warehouse, and the skate shop was just, like, kind of like a
piece of it.
A piece of it. It was more like, it was kind of like a showroom / skate shop, you know, kind of thing. It was like like a shop in a... factory, but like anyways it was really cool. There was ramps in the back and like a pool table and a big screen TV, and I had the key. I'd like just show up early and like take a shower really quick, and I'd be like watching TV or playing pool or like skating in the back, and I'd be like, what up everyone, okay, let's open the doors and start the day. Like
so you kind of like jumped in without like
there was even a kitchen there, so
you just like were like, I don't even know how I'm gonna cook my first meal, but I'm gonna do this. Because your pros and cons list, the pros outweighed the cons. The cons weren't big enough for you not to do it. And you're just like, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I have to at least give it a shot. Which, knowing you now, like, obviously, that is fully your personality. Like, you just got to give it a shot and see what happens.
Pretty much.
But, like, was there any part of you, like, on your way to test drive that van or, like, right after you bought it that was like, fuck, what have I done? Or were you just like, oh, this will be a really fun adventure? Or did you ever, like, second guess yourself?
I'm glad you asked that, because, like, actually, so, like, back then it wasn't that cool to, like, live in a van. You're, like, considered more, like, I think today in society, I'm actually considered a homeowner. In 2018, I took my second van to a show where they gave me a little badge that said homeowner. I'm like, cool. But, like, back then... you were just considered homeless, and so like everyone's telling me not to do it. I'm getting all this like feedback, like well, like on one side, my boss and like some people in some friends and stuff, I guess, were like, it's cool, like do it, but like the majority of people, even like my family and stuff, were like, don't do that. It's a bad idea. Like my mom was like, my son's gonna be homeless. Like, she called me homeless for like 5 years, but she lives in an RV now. But like, anyways, like, everyone's telling me not to do it, and like, I was so scared. I was like, oh my god, what am I doing? Like, oh my god, you know, like, am I doing the right thing? Actually, like, going through my head, like, am I doing the right thing? What am I doing? Like, the first nights you're like sleeping in this thing, you're just like, well, like, I got really good night's sleep, but, like, you're like, what am I doing? You know, like, it was totally super duper scary at first.
And you just kept doing it anyway.
Yeah, at that point, like, my whole point of doing it was to try and break free of that rent trap, like, paycheck to paycheck, so I was like... Yeah. So I was just, like, I guess, like, it wasn't, like, stopping me, but it was just, like, kind of, like, trying to just see, like, if there's a better way.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and if you already had like your full-time job and stuff, and the only thing you do is not pay rent, and like if nothing else in your life changed, you're automatically saving like hundreds of dollars just by not paying rent,
oh yeah,
which is incredible.
it was great, and I just started going to like the thrift store and buying shit and to like resell it to try and make extra money
Yeah.
that way because I was like, oh, now I have like this extra money, like
I know
that's
a
not
couple
going.
of vanners who do that. Yeah,
Yeah,
who flip things.
yeah, because I was like, now I'm not like paying rent and stuff, so now I
Mm-hmm.
have like a chunk of change, and so I took that chunk of change and put it into like other things to try and like make that chunk of change bigger, I guess, you know,
Yeah.
like, and so like and it was cool because like they gave me like this like pallet size area in the back of the skate shop that was like my storage.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I had my storage unit with all my stuff, but after like a few months, well, I had that regular job for like a year and a half, I think, but like after, you know, I slowly went through like stages like of
Yeah.
going into that storage unit, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting rid of this, I'm getting rid of this, I'm getting rid of this, like blah blah blah.
Over
And
the
then
course of like a year and a half.
shorter than that, because like I started to realize, I'm like, man, this stuff's gonna hold me back, and like I want to actually like travel and stuff.
Yeah.
And once I started realizing, like, I'm like, I don't want to have to come back for this stuff, like in this
Yeah.
fucking storage unit. And plus, like, and stuff I thought was important to me, you just get rid of it and you never think twice
Yeah.
about it again. So it's like crazy. You're like, you're like,
I
oh,
know
like,
some banners who've done that, who have put everything in storage like just in case, and I know very few of them who have gone back for it afterwards. And I didn't get a storage unit like or keep. I have like some sentimental stuff and like some artwork and things that like can't be replaced, but it's like 2 Tupperware bins and they're in my folks' basement. But other than that, like I didn't keep anything else. I didn't want a storage unit because I was like, I can just rebuy anything I have.
totally.
Like the stuff that I can't rebuy, I kept.
That
But I didn't want a storage unit because I was like, I just want to go. I don't want an easy out. Like I just want to go all in and see what happens. And if I need to like move back into an apartment, I can. And it sounds like you didn't know what the fuck you were doing, and back then it wasn't like hip and cool and trendy. And so keep your stuff in storage unit, see what happens, and then over some months you're like, all right, this stuff is actually just an anchor, and I don't want it anymore. I'm just gonna get rid of it gradually.
totally. And I remember it was easy for me when I first started too, because like the situation I started in,
Mm-hmm.
they had all the stuff at the shop. There was like
Mm-hmm.
fridge and like everything, so I like I keep all my cold food in there, and like,
Yeah.
I mean, take full advantage, like, so like I didn't really like go there to shower on the weekends, so that like when you first move from a house to like a van, you're like, think showering super important, so you think you need to like shower more than you really do.
Yeah.
Like you get to the point, the more like you live in a van, like you're like showers spread out longer and longer.
I used to shower like every like 2 or 3 days when I had an apartment, and now I'm like, oh, I guess it's been a week. I should maybe like wash myself.
Yeah.
You get a lot more comfortable with like being a little bit dirty. You're just dirty all the time, a little bit in the van, especially with a dog and like the way we do life. Like you're outside all the time. You have all these like adventures you like to do.
You could like get like boil some water, put some essential oils, do like a little sponge bath.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
like
hell
pretty
yeah.
nice. Like, but like during the winter it's way tougher. But like I don't know where I was going with that.
That's fine.
But yeah, I was lucky at the beginning because it was easy and there was like all those amenities, so it was like kind of easier to just like not know what I was doing, and then I had like a little storage area, and like also like not only that, like I come in the morning with my backpack full of all my shit to charge, like because I didn't really have like all that figured out, so like I just be like every plug in that shop, like I'd have shit plugged into everything, and I was like that for like a while, because then like I got laid off of that company because they like owed a lot of money to the people. They don't even exist anymore, but like I went and worked at a different skate company, and then like I got a job in San Francisco and went up there, and then like I was like, this sucks in the city, like I can't handle it. Like that was a cool company to do. It's like freeboards, like a snowboard on wheels. They had like a drop-in ramp from the second story to the first story.
Whoa.
Yeah. They'd put like a ramp there with like an airbag, and people be like doing flips into it and shit. But like,
oh my gosh,
it was still like the city, and there was like tweakers everywhere and shit. But like so then I was like, oh, I'm going to Tahoe. Like I got a job up in Tahoe for the winter. I was like, it's gonna be El Nino season, sweet. But then like I was working up there, and my van kept breaking down. It didn't really like the cold, and then like one day I was just parked on the side, or like it broke it was snowing really bad. I didn't want to put my chains on. I was like sliding everywhere, so I was like, I just pulled off to the side of the road. I was like, I'm gonna drive in a little bit, and then I was like, it's only getting worse. So I'm like, I better go, and I don't want to start again. So I was like, oh shit. So I was like, and I was like tired, and for some reason in my head, I thought going to sleep right there would be like chill. I was like, I'll just wake up in the morning and deal with it. But like, the snow plows clear roads when it snows a lot, and like I woke up and everything was just like moving. I was like, what the hell? At first I was just like, what's happening? Holy crap, I thought I was getting hit by an avalanche or something.
That's what I would think.
Yeah, that's what I seriously thought. Because the whole van's just moving, and it wasn't obvious that I was being hit by a snowplow. Like, it was just clearing snow, so I guess it was going pretty slow. And water's like barking. I'm just like, ugh, and as soon as it started, it stopped. I'm like, oh god, and then like, I like wiggle my door open because there's like all the snow. I like look, I just see a snowplow going down the road. I'm like,
he didn't even stop for you?
I don't think he knew I was there. I was God. Like, it was like really snowy, like white out. It got like way worse after I went to sleep. But like,
so that was the death of the first van.
Pretty bad decision. I got towed back. I called AAA. I was like, yo, I need to get a tow. Like,
I just got hit by a snowplow. Please help.
That was crazy too, because like they towed me. The guy was going so fast, like in this tow truck, like it was so crazy. And then like I just got towed right back to where I worked, the parking lot of the resort, like heavenly.
Yeah.
So he put me in a spot. I'm like, no, can you put me in a spot over there? Because I knew it was gonna have to be there for a few days. So I got a spot like on the side.
Yeah.
And it wasn't gonna move from there. And then this guy dropped off my van and started doing like donuts in his tow truck in the parking lot. It was really.
He was just having a great day.
It was really
playing.
It was really popular to do donuts in the parking lots of all the ski resorts there. Yeah, like,
I've never seen a tow truck do donuts.
That was my first time. I was super surprised. That's a good part of the story.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I guess all the snow started piling up around my van after a few weeks, and then like security guys were like, you can't live here. I was like, I work here and my van doesn't run, but like they weren't stoked. And so then I was sleeping on this guy's couch, and like I just walked to the van at like 5 a.m, start making breakfast. They still thought I was living in their parking lot. I was like, no, I slept on the
I'm not sleeping in the van. The van just can't move.
Kyle's house, like on his couch. I was like, I just come here for breakfast and to walk, and Wander was staying there all day, barking at everyone. And then like, I just come down on my lunch break and like walk him and throw the ball for him, and then like go back up. It was cool. You like just get off and you like snowboard down the mountain real quick, and then like go walk the dog and eat, and then like take the chairlift back up. Like,
what a lifestyle.
Yeah, it was cool, but it wasn't cool that the van broke down, and I ended up selling it for like $500. I lived in it already for like a year and a half by that point.
I think you got your money's worth.
Yeah, people are like, did you call insurance or something? I'm like, no, like,
no,
not worth it. Like,
so then you got a second van.
Yeah, then I went back down to Orange County and like couch surfed and saved up, worked for Greenpeace, and then saved up and bought a second van for $3,000.
Nice.
And then actually that one I named Freedom because I didn't have a van for a little bit, and then like I got a van again, and that's exactly how I felt. I was like, Freedom.
Oh yeah.
So that was Freedom the van, number 1.
Yeah. And so now you're on van number 4 or 5.
4. Well, like, so like one time Freedom broke down.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I say 4 or 5 is because like one time Freedom broke down. And it was this 1996 Dodge Ram B2500, and they don't make the parts for that van anymore.
Yeah.
And so, like, I forgot the whole story. It was pretty expensive, but it was going to take, like, a month and a half to get this part. So I was like, I need to figure out...
What am I going to do for the next 6 weeks?
You need to figure out how you're going to live. My home's gone.
Yeah.
So, like... So I'm like, what are my other options, Like, so then I'm just searching Craigslist for cheap vehicles, basically, like anything.
Yeah. Any old thing will work.
Yeah, like a Subaru or something, like hatchback, like just something like I could get for like cheap that like hardly runs that is gonna last me that month and a half. I ended up finding this Astro van for $500. I think it was on Facebook Marketplace actually, maybe, or Craigslist. But I went and go looked at it, and it drove. It was leaking you had to put water in the radiator and stuff.
Oh, man.
But like, it was only gonna be for a month and a half. So I got this thing for $500. It had the bed already, the seats that folded down. I was like, dope. And then, I lived in it for a month and a half. It had no problems. I never had to register it. I never insured it. I was like, because well, technically for the first 30 days, you don't have to, like, insure it, you know?
So you just pushed it a little
pushed a little
bit
more.
past
And then
that.
after that, like, I got freedom back. I was like, yeah, freedom. And so then I ended up just, like, giving that Astro van to this homeless dude. Because, like, I lived in it for a month and a half, and that's, like, even cheaper than rent. And, like, there's this dude that was, like, homeless that's always at the skate park. And I'm like, I gave him the keys, and I was like, hey, man, no one deserves to sleep in the rain, because it was going to be raining the next few days.
Aww.
And he's like, some people don't think that. And I was like, well, not me, man. And I gave him the van.
Oh man, I bet he was stoked.
Yeah. So, like,
Yeah.
that was why I kind of 5 vans.
Yeah. So the majority of your vans until this one have been kind of that style, like pretty cheap, pretty small. They have a lot of quirks. They might break down. And then this one is new and it's big and it's beautiful. And
Yeah.
you lived in it at first with a partner. And, like, that's, like, a whole different side of vanning. And since you've had both sides, like, you know, start with what you can afford, start small, like, you know, kind of like a starter home mentality. And then you, like, gradually went up. Like, I would really like to hear about the differences between, like, your small, cheap, like, old vans living alone, and now you have this, like, new shiny van, and then you had a partner, and, like, what are the biggest, like, pros and cons of both? Small and cheap and
question.
Big and fancy and partnered.
Well, so, like, after the freedom of the van too, I lived in this 1998 ambulance.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so 1998, that was, like, my newest one. I'm like,
yeah.
So yeah, now it's this 2019 Transit. I got that because I was moving into it with, another human, and she was like, I don't know where I'm gonna put all my stuff. Like, I'm like, yeah, and, like,
well, a smaller van's way harder for two
no,
people.
no, there's no way. Well, I have a lot of hobbies, so I have a lot of shit myself, and there's, like, no way anyone was getting added to that ambulance.
No.
And the one before that, there would be even less of a way, you know, like,
Yeah.
like, get rid of everything and come join me. Like, no, you know.
Yeah.
But, like, and then so this one's pretty cool, and I can stand up in it.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
Makes a big difference.
It's the hugest difference. For the beginning, I was, like, always, like, on the floor, like, laying down, like, changing and shit still. And I'd just be staring at the ceiling and be like, oh my god, I can stand up. Because, like, for 5 years, I lived in vehicles where I couldn't stand up, you know? And so that's why this one's freedom of the van. So the ambulance is freedom of the ambulance, and this is freedom of the van. Because, like, they're all freedom, forms of freedom now. It's, like, my favorite part about van life is the freedom. But, like, so, like, the reason why I did this is because of breaking down and stuff. And, like, when it breaks down, you have to figure out how you're going to live. In every van I've had, like, that first freedom and then freedom of the ambulance, it offers a lot more less freedom. When every state you go to, you have to find a mechanic. Like, but, like,
oh yeah.
And then you have to find how you're going to live for that. Like, in Salt Lake, I just lived in a tent for, like, a month. Like, it was pretty funny. I put my tent and, like, I got my solar panel off the roof, and, like, I got my battery. It was, like, all in the tent. Like,
I'm gonna make this work, whatever.
Yeah, so I'd be like sitting in the tent on my computer, like, getting some power and shit. Like, I don't know. You actually become really resourceful from living in a van, you know.
Yeah.
Like, but so that goes to your question. That's the biggest probably pros and cons. Is, like, it's a little different stressor. I'm making, like, payments on this one, so it's kind of like rent, but that's still, like, cheaper than rent. And then also, like,
you don't have to take it to the mechanic as often.
That's so, like, I got cheap vans, but they're, like, at least the Freedom the van, the first one, probably, like, I got it for $3,000, but in a mechanic's fees and stuff I paid, I might have, like, I'd have to go back and look at all the bills, you know, but, like, I might have quadrupled the price or something. Like, it's pretty insane, like, some of the stuff that could happen, and some of the, all of a sudden you get hit with, like, a huge bill, and you're like, oh god. Like, that's the biggest, like, pros and cons.
Yeah,
I don't
you
know
can
if
stand in it, that it's bigger, that it's more reliable. So it's kind of a trade-off. Like, the smaller, cheaper vans aren't necessarily cheaper if you spend all of your money on mechanics fees.
I can't tell you, like, also, like, just, it's a little different stress because you, like, kind of like rent, but, like, when you're out in the, like, BLM land and desert and your ambulance broke down and you're on like you're not I'm not a mechanic anyways. Like I don't,
No.
like I can twist a wrench. I don't know the problem. So I'll be like on the group for the engine. What this is what's happening. What do you guys think? In the middle of the desert, like looking for someone to help me. And then they're like, this is what we think. So you get a ride to town. You get the part that they told you might be wrong. Get back out there, change it. Nothing. Like, hey guys.
So it's a lot of trial and error, and like, being stuck out there and relying on like the advice from like a forum, which are usually filled with very helpful, very knowledgeable people. But you're like, okay, but I did that, and like now it still doesn't work. What the F? What am I gonna do now?
So I think my most stressful part about van life's been the breakdowns.
Yeah.
And so like getting a newer van and eliminating that most stressful part for me is extremely nice. Because literally, like, people think you get a van and you just travel around the whole country. But this is my first time exploring Colorado after, like, almost 7 years in a van, you know? And, like, there's, like, this line of, like, Nevada. I don't know. It's hard to move around because it's expensive. But, like, I could tell you, in all the places I have been, I could tell you, like, all the mechanics.
The best mechanics. So if you break down in the western states, we probably got you. But that brings up my next question that I definitely want to touch on and that I always find really interesting with all the vanners. How do you afford van life? How do you make money? And, like, do you have an idea of, like, your monthly costs and how much you make and that sort of thing? Or do you just... need money, make money. Need money, make money. Like, how do you do it?
Sometimes it's like a need money, make money. But, like, at the beginning, well, like, it's been, it's always evolving. But, like, I've had so many jobs at the beginning, especially when I lived in a van. Mm-hmm. It's actually kind of cool, because once you start living in a van and you eliminate, like, that rent overhead. Yeah. That you have to come up with, which I kind of like have again, kind of, but like, anyways, like, explain that later. But like, once you eliminate that, and also having a big part's having everything in your van and being ready to move, because like, when you live in a house, moving is expensive. Yes. And a headache. Yeah, so like, it got really exciting for me to like quit a job and start a new one, because like I'm like, oh, I gotta go learn something else. Like at first I was like, scared. I'd be scared to be like, I have to quit. Like, I'm so sorry. Like,
and now it's I'd like, feel really bad. Go do whatever I want to do now.
Yeah, and at the beginning I had my regular job for the first like year and a half, and then like I switched, and then so I got laid off of that one, and then like it's such a confusing thing. Like I've literally done so many things, but so I'll go through some of it, but like. Yeah, I got laid off of that one, and then, like, they gave me, like, a severance thing or whatever, where you still get paid for a few weeks, because they had to lay me off. Yeah, and while I was still getting paid, I just walked across the street to this other skate company, and their social media, they didn't really, I was like, who's doing you guys' social media? It was just, like, the wife of the guy that owned it, and I was like, you guys need help, and, like, they didn't even have that job before, and I was, like, kind of created it, and so, like, I went in, I became, like, their social media manager, so I found a job for Greenpeace. Nice. But then, like, while I was working for them, these guys I met, like, worked for this, like, student loan solutions company. And so then, like, when I lost that job, I was like, I need another one. So then I just called those guys because they had told me they could give me a job. Nice. It was my first time having to put on a button-up shirt. I only worked there for about 2 weeks. And then, like, my buddy, like, this guy, Stevie B, he ran this company called Freeboards, like the snowboard on wheels in San Francisco. And he's like, yo, we need someone to run our warehouse. You want to come to San Francisco? Because, like, living there is really expensive, so it's hard for them to get someone. Right. But and I lived in my van, so it was, like, perfect. Yeah. And so I'm like, yeah, this is going to be my first time traveling in my van. You know, I've been living it for, like, a year and a half. I'm like, yeah, man. I'm like, it's going to take me, like, I think I told him it's going to take me, like, a month to get there, you know? I went so slow. Because, like, oh, my God. I was only getting 8 miles to the gallon in that van. And so, like, I wanted to take... I'm like, if I'm driving... I'm like, this is my biggest trip. I'm like, if I'm driving all the way to San Francisco, it's not even that big nowadays. Like, from Southern California. But I was going to take the PCH, you know, and that's, like, super beautiful, like, highway or whatever. And I had all these skate parks along the way to stop at, because that was, like, what I did back then, you know? Yeah. That was, like, my main hobby. And so, like, I hit all the skate parks. I was like drove up PCH and like did so many hikes and stuff. I didn't even have the dog yet. You know, that was before I adopted Wanderer. I get to San Francisco, and it's pretty gnarly. There's like tents everywhere. Like there's people pushing like 2-story structures. I was like so in awe. I was taking pictures of all these like tent cities and like two-story like things on wheels with like ladders going to the top, and they're like pushing them to the next spot, and you're like, some of it was so confusing. You're like looking at like, I don't even know how that system works, you know? Like it's just intriguing. But like I think I got off on a tangent.
I think
maybe
you did. Yeah. So how do you make money and pay for your van?
Oh well, yeah. Well, those are some of the so those are like that's some. Anyways, then San Francisco ended up sucking. I went and worked in the snowboard thing. My van got hit by the snowplow. Homeless again. Kind of. Well, like I sold that van for $500. Went back to Southern California. Worked for Greenpeace again. This time I worked for them for like, I think like a year and a half or 2 years. Dang. And that was pretty cool because you get like $15 an hour plus bonuses. They're all about the sustainable wage, and like it is, you have to be sustainable within the organization too, because they want to put as much money towards the actual cause. They don't want to pay you for nothing, so that's why you get like kind of like quoted out is what it's called. You could quota out if you're not hitting it. But I ended up surviving like way longer this time. And that was cool because I was able to buy my next van, the Freedom one, you know, and save up a ton of money. Now I sell a lot of stickers, and I put them in like shops and stuff, and it actually does pretty good. And I get like a lot of orders on my website, and I actually do like a little podcast too. I don't take it like super seriously, but like also my main thing that I want to try to do next, I have like one issue of a magazine I made years ago, and I'm halfway through the second issue. But yeah, I'm trying to start like this van life magazine, because like all the way that van life's kind of portrayed out there is kind of like, I don't really like dig it, because like they try and make like it seem like sunshine and rainbows, and like you have to have this architectural masterpiece, like beautiful fucking thing that I don't even get it. But like it's definitely changed since like 7 years ago, like and so like I guess like like my magazine, the first issue is like, how can you hit your head, like how can you spill water, like, you know, like it's like van accidents in a van. It's like I try and kind of make it more real, because like, and that's why my website's called Vanning Ain't No Joke too, is because like that's more how I feel about it. Like it's like kind of like, yo, like it's kind of serious shit, like it's like, it isn't a joke. It's like, I guess like it's hard work, you know. It's not just an easy
you don't just move into a van and then like all your problems are solved. Like you just have a whole brand new problems. And
those people that do build the architectural masterpieces, that's a lot of work, so good job, y'all.
Not it's
but
not
you
for
don't
me.
need don't need that. You don't need it. You just need, you don't even like, you live out of the van kind of more than like in the van. During the winter, I guess it's more in the van, but like but I don't know. You don't need an architectural masterpiece.
It doesn't need,
It just has to be functional, and it should be.
Especially like a lot of the vans that you've done. You know, you bought the van and it didn't even have a build out, didn't even have a bed, like didn't even have a kitchen, didn't even have anything, and that's one thing that I recommend to a lot of people. If you're gonna buy a van or anything, or you think you might want to buy a van, like use what you already have. Go camping in like the car you already have, or if you have a van, like throw an air mattress in it. Like don't do the build out yet. Like just keep it really simple and like see what you need, and like don't get suckered into this like, you know, glamorized like version of it. You know, it doesn't need to be expensive. Like it can be cheap as fuck.
Totally. And like also when you get your van, like sleep on the floor for a little bit or something, because like just like look at it, you know, sleep on the floor, spend nights on, I don't know, every van I've had, I slept on the floor every time first, and that's how I like lived. And you're just like looking, and it gives you time to like really
think about how you're going to use the space,
and all the possibilities and stuff. And then also like after that, like the first thing you could do is just like put your bed in, because once you get the bed in, you have storage, and you have like a set place to sleep. Because when you're on the floor, you're like usually moving your blankets back. You're like rolling your blankets back up and then putting them on the side, and then it's like your space, because like you gotta walk around. You know, so like you're doing that, but then once you get the bed in, your stuff could go under the bed, and then you like got your spot to sleep. Then you're not like setting up your bed every night. Your blankets like have a place to live.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to cover your blankets with like a tarp or something because they still could be like dirty during those times.
Yeah.
But like I don't know. Once you sleep in your bed too, you see like you could continue picturing the space, and then I don't know, everything I've done, I've lived in it while I was building it. So like you just do it little at a time. Actually, with this one, it's a little weirder. So actually, like, I lived in a house for the first time for 3 months for after 5 years not living then. Because when I was building that thing and I was starting to date like my ex-girlfriend, like we I couldn't just like tell her like she was already like not sure how she's gonna live in a van, and like I couldn't just be like, yeah, just living it while we're building it out, which we actually kind of ended up doing, but we got it to a pretty good point this time. But before we ended up moving to Portland, I did sleep in the floor and live in it with no insulation, like, for, like, months. But, yeah, we spent 3 months, like, in this house, like, building it, and that's not enough time to build it, but we got, like, the insulation, I got windows in, I got the bed, all the framing,
yeah,
the walls.
like, you got, like, the basics.
Yeah, the walls, and I think we had, like, a counter, but, like, no drawers. Like, most of the stuff was still, like, emptiness kind of. Well, and like there was a really nice shelving system on the side, and also important to mention, short-term solutions versus long-term solutions.
Yep.
That's one thing I've learned. Sometimes your short-term solutions become your long-term solutions.
Yeah.
But we had it's really easy to just like throw a piece of wood and drill a piece of wood on top, and then drill a piece of wood into it and make like just a little tiny shelf within like you could do like all the shelving and stuff, as if you're not worried about painting and sanding and all that stuff. If it's a temporary short-term solution, you could put like lots of little temporary storage solutions. So we actually had a lot of that going on. And then we just started building it slowly and slowly, and then you take you could like shuffle stuff around.
You actually like need it. Like what is a realistic solution for your actual needs.
Yeah, and then also it's like kind of cost effective that way too, because you're not having to like throw down like a chunk of change at once, like you build it up. So like I call it van life the real life survival video game.
Yeah.
You just kind of like level up and level up and level up. And, like...
I think that's fair. Yeah. Absolutely. So what other pieces
you like
of
start
advice?
with this like basic nothing, and then you get insulation, and you're like, I leveled up, like.
Yeah.
I actually didn't have like
little improvement makes a difference.
Yeah, the first 5 years I didn't have a fridge. You're living with you're doing the cooler life.
Yeah, I just have the cooler.
Yeah. But once you get if you ever upgrade to a fridge, you're gonna be like, oh, that's a huge level. That's like a huge level up. Like,
I've thought about it, but I would have to get another solar panel, and for me to put another solar panel on my roof, I'd have to take down all of this ceiling that's already here to drill into the roof and add another one, and I don't want to do that.
That's why vanning ain't no joke, y'all.
No. But it's also like approachable. I think that's the biggest thing that like your lifestyle kind of shows more so than like modern vanning content. It's more like you can buy a van for $1,500 and live in it for a year and a half. Like, it doesn't need to be fancy, it doesn't need to be special, but at the same time, like, as you're able to upgrade and you're able to get like a newer van that maybe needs to go to the mechanic less or like has more space you can stand in, why not make the upgrade if it doesn't?
And not just that, but you don't have to quit your job to live in a van.
No,
that's another common thing. I hear that all the time. People are like, oh yeah, I'm still gonna live in it for this time because I still have my job. I'm like, no, like.
Yeah, you had a job for the first few years.
And I had certain amenities, which every job should have the power thing and like maybe not the shower, but all that stuff you figure out, and you don't need to like you just go to Planet Fitness before work, take a shower. If you need to take a shower before work, you get nice and smelling nice and gel your hair.
Yeah,
put on a suit, whatever you gotta do, go right to work.
You don't have to quit your job.
So many people do that anyway. So many people with houses do that anyways because they go to work out like in the morning.
Shower.
And then put on their.
There's no difference.
Yeah, put on their suit and tie, so you're just doing it with them, like. But yeah. The hardest part I think is getting started because like that whole like. That's the hardest part about van life, probably, is just starting, because everything you're worried about, you figure out. Yeah, I think that's true. And I was going to ask you what advice you would give to people, but I think you just dished out, like,
4 really awesome pieces of advice. The hardest part about vanning is getting started. Get yourself a Planet Fitness membership or some other gym membership. You don't have to quit your job, and like start small with your van. It doesn't need to be like a loft on wheels. Like it can be whatever you need it to be. Like it doesn't, it doesn't need to have like granite countertops and like subway tiles and like a shower. Like you don't need those things.
I guess also like it's way cooler when your van's a reflection of you and it has some style to it that reflects you. You know, like, but everyone's different. To each their own. Yeah. So
I agree. Lee, where could people find you online if they want to follow you?
So, you could find me at vanningaintnojoke.com is a really good website to go to. I'm the one who made it. It's kind of crazy, but like, that's you can find my magazine there. It's totally free. I think some podcasts and stuff like. Also, I make some cool stickers. Mm-hmm. And also the future is the future, because making plans, I think, sucks. And it creates expectations, and it's good to be in the moment and be open to, like, all the possibilities that could come your way. And it's good to take opportunities when they come, because, like, van life offers lots of opportunities. And if you don't take them, they might not come again, so.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. And I think
I said more than I was supposed to.
That is all right. I kind of knew that this would be one of my longer episodes, so I'm not surprised at all. You have a lot of really interesting stories, and like your perspective on life is really interesting, and also the way your brain works is very squirrel. So I'm not surprised, but I'm really glad that you were here.
If you saw how messy my van always is too, it's a reflection of how messy my brain is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll have some shots of his van in an upcoming vlog, or maybe before this comes. I don't actually know when this is going to come out, but yeah, his van is really cool, and I highly recommend checking out his channels, Freedom the Vangeon and Vanning Ain't No Joke, and then the website where you can get all the stickers and the t-shirts. Support another vanner on the road, and yeah.
Man, thanks so much for having me on here, Holly. Deliberate living
being here.
It's pretty cool. And also, when you're living in a van, you meet lots of people who are living deliberately, which is why that's the name of your podcast, which is the best. It's a really good name.
I think that you don't have to live in a van to live deliberately, but I think that however you're living, you should think about it, and I think so often we don't think about how we're living. We just go through the motions and we're just living, and I think that when you move into a van, you kind of have to think about like the simple stuff as well as the big stuff, and that's what makes it more deliberate. So thank you everybody for watching, listening, reading, however you consume this podcast. I really appreciate everyone who has been a part of it over the last year and change. And continues to be a part of it as we move forward. If you want to support the podcast, it would mean everything to me if you would like, subscribe, share. That's how, we get seen by more people who need this information and who need to hear these stories about, living deliberately alternative lifestyles. And if you want to help offset some of the costs that go into producing the show, I do have a Venmo, a PayPal, and a Patreon set up, and the dogs are starting to get restless as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and wrap this shit up right here. Thank you, Lee, for being a part of it, and thank you, everybody, for listening. As always, tune in next week for another awesome episode.
Thanks for taking your time to create all this cool content, too.
Thank you. Bye!
We've reached the end of this episode of Deliberate Living. You can find the show notes and everything we referenced over on my website at www.hollycpriestley.com, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube, where I also publish weekly vlogs and other informative videos. You can come join my Patreon community and get behind the scenes and bonus content, as well as postcards, stickers, and whatever else I choose to create. I'll see you next week on Deliberate Living, and until next time, keep your life on the DL too.